Here we are.
We're live,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah. Hello, yes, we are online, yeah. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to AOAUK podcast. Once a month, especially the first week of the month, me and Mandi and Marcus, we will meet up on the YouTube and also by Zoom, talking about monthly transit, especially new moon and full moon. And today's setting is a little bit interesting because you can see my lighting is not really normal. Well, this is because I'm not in UK at this moment. Yeah, but this is not important. Well, so today we're going to talk about the next full moon, right? Gemini full moon. So, well, at this full moon, is pretty interesting because the moon going to conjunct Mars, and Mars is retrograde at this moment. So I think that Mars is the, at this moment, Mars is the main role in the sky because retrograde, out of bound, everything, nearly everything related to Mars. So how do you guys take about this full moon?
Okay. Should we maybe pull the chart up as well, Rod?
Sure.
Because or I could do. I don't mind or whatever. I've got to.
I can do that chart. I can
fantastic.
do the chart. What if I drop? I will let you do that.
Okay. All right. I can do it. Shall I? How are you doing? Okay, brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. Just so that's the UK version, isn't it, Rod? There, that's the full moon.
Yes.
in the UK. Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's like you can see it's exactly conjunct Mars, like to the degree. So like they're both 16 degrees. So the moon is right on top of Mars. I don't know about the declination, which is how far apart they are, because obviously in the sky there's two axes we're looking at, and the one axis that we're looking at in terms of the chart is really that what's called the ecliptic, which is other planets in the when they've got the same degree, 16 degrees. That means in the plane of the Earth's orbit around the sun. so
should we check it?
Yeah, that'd be interesting, maybe just to see, because the other axis is like, so in the sky they might actually they'd be lined up with each other, but they might actually be quite far apart. So if you see here, we've got declination of the moon is plus 25, and the declination of Mars, oh my goodness, is plus 24. So they are literally pretty much on top of each other. So that's really significant, because so this is an important point in astrology. I think not all conjunctions are equal, because some of them are going to have more impact than others. And this, although it's just a transient one, it's only a full moon, the actual conjunction only lasts like a couple of hours or something. Because it's a full moon, it's sort of bringing things out into the open for this sort of recent lunation for the new moon that we had at the end of November. And it's quite significant because the moon is literally on top of Mars. So that could create some sort of frayed tempers and some communications bust ups. And just I've noticed, because I'm Scorpio rising, so Mars is my avatar. Ever since Mars has been retrograde, I've got lots of little cuts on my hands just from going climbing and normal things, but I've been cutting my hands a lot, which is a real Mars in Gemini vibe. And also just breaking things, not massively. It's not like having a big Mars transit, but just, so it's kind of like Mars is a bit malfunctional at the moment. So I think this moon Mars, because moon's often emotions, it brings the emotions to the surface. Gemini is a very loud voiced verbal sign, and Mars, although Gemini is a very rational, humane sign. So this is a kind of big, for me, this is an argument signature. This is a crossword signature. This is a kind of like, if anybody's been keeping a lid on anything, this is when it might pop up. And because it's in a sort of wide square to Neptune, that can be a bit of a problem, because it can sort of like, I always say the Mars Neptune thing, at its worst, it's a bit like napalm. It sort of just goes everywhere. So it's sort of like if people, so this is making it all sound like a horror show. It won't necessarily be a horror show. It's just people's tempers might be a bit more frayed. and there might be on a personal level a bit more tendency to sort of explode and get a bit stressed in the lead up to this sort of full moon around the 8th, and then around the 8th, and then after that point things should start to sort of de-escalate a little bit. It may just be that people are really busy at work, that sort of vibe, I think. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, brilliant, Marcus, and I'd just like to add a couple of words about Gemini and Sagittarius in the full moon situation. As you've alluded to, the full moon is the culmination. It's when things come to light. It's full light. Things get seen, and with this, things will get heard or reheard, because of course that Mars is in retrograde. So if you think about, one of the qualities of Gemini is gossip, and one of the qualities of Sagittarius is exaggeration.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And Neptune's involved. So that makes you a little bit wary of, if you hear gossip, it exaggerates, you get the sort of whispers become the shouts, because we've got Mars there, and that's loud. And you could end up getting things all blown out of proportion. And I think another thing for the Gemini and Sagittarius axis is the idea of perspective and proportion. Gemini likes the small details, likes the nitty-gritty, the bits and pieces, and the gossip, and the, oh, did you hear this, did you hear that? And Sagittarius will put kind of meaning on it, and it might put false meaning on it, for example. And then when you've got Mars there, conjunct, as you say, that's very tight. So Moon and Mars together in a conjunction in any sign is irritable. It's sort of moody and irritable and reactive, and I've got Moon conjunct Mars natally, so I live that.
Yeah, but you say you're not a very moody person, Mandy. You're a very logical person. It's interesting. You could speak to this conjunction, I think, more than any of us, because your Moon Mars conjunction is in air sign.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's sort of almost a contradiction.
I am moody. When I was a child, in particular, when I was that had a reputation for being moody, and I actually played up to it, oh, she's in a mood again, and I do this and storm off in a kind of really exaggerated way, kind of thing, right on my MC as well.
Yeah,
so
speaking of someone with Mars in Cancer opposite my Moon in Capricorn, I mean, like I used to be the incredible sulk as a child. I used to just stick my lip out and just sulk for hours
absolutely
at
a
time.
That is so interesting. So all three of us, the Moon Mars aspect have a Moon opposite Mars, but it's associated.
Yes, yeah. It's still, I think it still counts though, Rob, because in traditional astrology they would be opposite by Anticyon, wouldn't they? So you'd
exactly.
Yes. So yeah, we've all got Moon Mars contacts, which is hilarious. So we're like, no, you're not moody, you're fine.
No, compare with me. Oh my god.
I'd also like to make a little bit of an aside here, Marcus, touching on what you said about your Scorpio ascendant, and obviously Mars. I like the word avatar actually rather than ruler for
yeah.
It's a good word.
Thanks.
I'm gonna steal that, I think. But cool. That sort of having Mars as your avatar for the Scorpio, and you have little cuts and little wounds and sort of little accidental things happening. And I've just discovered that my rescue cat is a Scorpio. He's just had his birthday. And since Mars literally just had this understanding now, as you've been talking, Marcus, that as we've been talking, that since Mars went retrograde, when I got him just under a year ago, he had some massive fights, like physical injury laden fights with a local cat who's very aggressive. That has started again. He's got cuts on his nose, he's got cuts in his leg, and all the rest of it. Yeah. So yeah, astrology works for pets too.
Yes, that's fascinating.
Point. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Oh, poor little sausage.
He's all right. He's okay.
But that's interesting, Mandy, because I hope I'm not spilling all your tea, but because you've got a Gemini rising, by whole sign, that would put Scorpio on the cusp of your 6th natally.
Yes.
So your pets in general, Mars would be their avatar. So
absolutely.
And so, of course, you end up with a Scorpio cat.
Because the 6th house is to do with, of course, pets. And I obviously adopted the cat from the RSPCA, the Royal Society of Protection of Cruelty to Animals, because the poor little thing had a bad start in life. And I have Neptune in the 6th house. And I I didn't change his name. His name, Neptune in the sixth house for a cat, is Misty.
Oh,
Again.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Astrology is so
and he came to me
literal.
he came to me in a dream, and then I found him online. I'm not joking.
No,
He came to me in a dream, and I
That's
found
amazing.
him online, and then he was at my local RSPCA, and I had him home with me within the week. So there you go. Astrology works for pets. This is the pet edition of the podcast.
But that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I mean, it's so literal, isn't it? Sometimes. Just by the way, the sixth house, for anyone who's an astro newbie, is the bit just below. Can you will they see your pointer, Rod, if you've got like the sixth house is the bit just below the sort of western horizon, which is this that region of the chart which Rod has just indicated now.
Pointed it.
Thank you. Yeah, so just so that so it's that bit. So we tend to look at the sign just on the cusp of the sixth house and then say what planet rules that sign. So in this chart, the full moon in the UK, it's Aries. So it'd be again Mars ruling the sixth house. So anyway, just for anyone who's like, what sixth house? What are they talking about? So yeah.
Well,
so,
I think basically our audience have a little bit knowledge about chart, at least I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, sure. I'm sure the majority.
But it's nice to mention it, because for someone totally new to our channel, they maybe have no idea, but they can learn a little bit. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
It's interesting in terms of the planetary movements as well. When you think about the time of day, the sixth house is just after sunset, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I always think that's quite interesting.
It is an interesting one. I mean, I mean, if we're gonna, like, this isn't slightly off topic, but like the sixth house, because we've mentioned it, it's curious that it became pets. I mean, the other meaning of the sixth house is illness, and you can see that in the sense that it's the place where the sun has just gone down. So it's like there might be something, because obviously to the Egyptians and to many ancient civilizations, that was a place of the sun entering the underworld. So it's funny that it's not the place of death, but you could see why it might be associated with illness. But it was often a part of the chart also associated with one's servants and also, or employees in a modern context, that would be, and also pets. Deb Holding's done a great book on that called The Houses, the Temples of the Sky, which I think is probably the most sort of succinct and well-researched book that I've seen.
Small animals, isn't it, in the sixth? Is it big houses in the 12th? The opposite, horses and elephants would be in the 12th house.
Yes, exactly that. And it always makes me laugh that the sixth house was animals no larger than a goat, I think. Just made me laugh. Anyway.
Goats brings us to Capricorn, doesn't it? Mercury is in Capricorn, which is obviously the ruler of the moon here, or the avatar of the moon, and that's doing some interesting things in the charts. And because I think we've got there the full moon. Well, certainly the moon itself and Mars is in trine to Saturn. So that's kind of urging us to say the right thing and to do the right thing, right? That Saturn there in Aquarius, but Mercury in Capricorn kind of echoes that, because you've got the mercurial Gemini there, and then you've got the Saturn there. So that's kind of almost like what you might call kind of a double whammy, where something is written twice, potentially, not in a particularly strong way, but if you're looking for some perhaps guidelines in how to sort of how to deliver news or speech, or how to pass on so-called gossip or whatnot, Mercury in Capricorn is perhaps not about exaggeration at all. It's about getting it right. It's sort of being communicating a little bit more cautiously and with a little bit more authority, perhaps.
Fact check. Fact check.
Fact check, yes. I thought you were asking me to do a fact check.
No. Damn it!
Astrology in action.
What are you talking
Astrology in action.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Fact check. Exactly, fact check. Yeah.
I think it's exactly that, Mandy. That's really perceptive of you. Like the trine to Saturn in this case might be a real saving grace, because it's sort of like it's sextiling the sun and picking up, so it's picking up both ends. So it's just like the usual Saturn in Aquarius social conservatism. Like instead of just unleashing and saying everything that you feel, and like, so if things do blow up around the sort of new moon, sort of in that first week of December, or you're feeling increasingly stressed and like you really just want to have a go at somebody and let them hear it, or write an email that's just like, or there's a situation that arises where you just kind of, things get a bit verbally heated, or you can feel that energy going on. The trine and sextile from that Saturn in Aquarius is just like, be mindful of social boundaries, edit what you say, just keep it a little bit more cool and contained. So it's all very editing and being mindful of social boundaries, and that will save people from ending up with egg on their face or whatever, which is I think the idea of having egg on one's face, I think, is a very Moon Mars vibe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Smashed egg on your face.
Very lunar, yeah.
Yeah.
Another aspect of this chart is very curious for me, especially since I student when I was study astrology. And every time when I see this set of aspects, I always ask me, what does that mean? Doesn't mean I couldn't make an interpretation, but I just like, well, it's pretty interesting because here in this chart we have the Venus on 27 degrees Sagittarius square that Jupiter at the 29 degree Pisces. And to be honest, when usually we think about the square is kind of, a little bit heavy, a little bit hard, or a little bit slow. But when those beautiful, softy, sweetie planet, Venus and Jupiter, square each other, it's like, what could that mean? Is that suggest something good but coming slowly, or how do you guys thinking about this set of aspects?
And did you want to go first, or do you want?
Yeah, just to say that Neptune's there as well, because you've got the Jupiter Neptune conjunction there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've already mentioned about boundaries. And this is an invitation to perhaps to overstep boundaries. I think Venus with Jupiter, especially as Venus is in Jupiter's sign, or one of Jupiter's signs, which is Sagittarius. Again, we go back to that extravagance. We go back to maybe exaggeration as well. I mean, I've mentioned exaggeration, but also extravagance as well. Venus is values, and Venus can be about what you go and buy. It seems we might say, if we look at those two, we might say, beware of overindulging, beware of overspending, although given the current cost of living crisis in the UK and much of the world, that might not be possible, or it might be just be careful, Yeah. What do you think, Marcus?
I think you make a point. I think, Mandi, you make a point, because also the season at this moment is people start to do their shopping for the holiday season, and you could usually, I mean, from my culture where I'm from, we don't have this kind of a holiday season. Well, we still have a Christmas for the church for people, but when I came to Europe, I just like, wow, what? You guys buy whole lots of things during this season, especially like a grandparents or parents for kids, and a gift for this, gift for that. I was like fascinating about how many gifts, if there's a grandparents and they have maybe at least 5 or 6 grandchildren, you can see the gift. I would think, why are you doing this? And this year, and this is pretty interesting, this year we have a lot of economic concern, and especially I just read before I came up, I just read the news about talking about the energy crisis, and the people have to choosing between the heat of the house or pay the bill or pay everyday's life, and a lot of family would have like reduce their spending. So, Marcus, how you see this set? I'm quite curious, because in traditional view, both planets are beneficial planets.
Yeah, right? Yeah. No, both of you are making some really interesting points. I wonder, that you may not be right there. I mean, what you were saying, Mandy, about this being maybe an overspending thing, or something about sort of like going for more luxury. Exactly as you were saying, Rod, this may be a run up to Christmas thing. I know I've been noticing in myself, like I had a train journey last week, and I use this little app to sort of upgrade myself to first class cheaply sometimes, if you can do that. And I've been wanting to do that, and I'm like,
many people do.
Yeah, but I don't currently have the income to justify that kind of bougie approach. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like, hang on, what's going on here? You know, anyway, just I thought I'd just pull up Firmicus, Roman astrologer, because he has some interesting takes on these. And then I'll give my book thing, and then I'll just give out my head thing. So the book thing, he says, the combination of Jupiter and Venus in square aspect with Venus in the superior position, because Firmicus always makes a distinction by which planet is in the 10th sign from the other one. And he says it's usually better to have the Jupiter in the superior position. If you have Venus in the superior position, as she is here, because Venus is in the 10th sign from Jupiter, that's slightly less auspicious. So he says, if Venus is in the superior position, she indicates illicit loves, also occupations having to do with clothing and care of the body. This is in a birth chart, of course, he's talking about. The natives will show a desire for adornment, luxury, and pleasure. So that might fit with the gift-giving thing you're talking about, enjoying stuff. But whenever they attain prosperity and happiness, these conditions turn to their opposites. So that's really interesting. I think that really fits with what you guys were proposing about the overspending theme. And what's interesting here, that to me, that's out of the book, and then my thoughts out of my head are that this is a really propitious or fortunate square in some respects, but with a little dark side. The fortunate respect is that obviously both benefics, and they are in mutual reception. You've got Venus in Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter in Pisces, which is Venus's exaltation. They're really supporting and endorsing each other's agendas. They'll amplify each other's benefic qualities, but it's a square, so there's some stress involved. There's a square traditionally was an aspect of incomplete hostility, and they are in the last degrees of the signs, which traditionally were the terms of the malefics. The last 4 degrees of Sagittarius or so were ruled by Mars. The last few degrees of Pisces were ruled by Saturn, which gives a slightly darker, more difficult tone to the square. And also Jupiter is on a really crappy fixed star called Scheat, which kind of, I always joke it is what it sounds like. And just Scheat is a tricky star. It's a Mercury. I know, sorry, Ron. It's one of my terrible astro jokes, but it's a Mercury Mars star, so it can produce misfortune. So this is a real paradox here. We've got both the benefics, both really enjoying each other's company, producing big things, blowing up the pleasure is probably how I'd think of this, very much in line with what you guys were saying. But with this potential for maybe overdoing it and then reversal, as Firmicus says, reversal afterwards. So I think that totally fits with what you guys suggest. Maybe a bit of overspending in the run up to Christmas, a bit of like, hey, we've got money, let's spend it, and then like, whoops.
Yeah, and I'd like, Marcus, brilliant, thank you, and thank you for putting some really amazing traditional astrology and quoting some really amazing traditional astrology.
Beautiful.
Kind of proves, I think Marcus's work in these generally, but in these podcasts also proves time and time again how relevant these old texts still are. It's just a matter of the context changing.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, exactly. And also how you approach them, because I think sometimes it's like reading any text. You've got to try and read them within the context of the tradition, and because they do have a certain tone that can seem really fatalistically, but once you learn to sort of pick the berries out of the nettles and interpret them, they're not at all, actually. There's a lot of nuance, but they're written and the style is completely different. Modern texts are written with one eye on the reader, sort of thinking, oh, how might they take this? Let's not get sued. Whereas traditional astrologers were always just thinking, what's the maximum example of this I can give? like the most extreme example, so you'll remember it. So to a modern reader, that can be very jarring, because it sort of says this person will have no legs and will be born in poverty and like will be a mass murderer and will die alone. And it's just like, oh my God, what? And you see that in your own chart, and it kind of makes you want to cry, you know. But then actually, you've kind of got to realize that that wasn't how it was done in practice. You'd look at that aspect and go, okay, that's a bad thing, but then it's also got that, and it's also got that, and it's also got that. So they would weigh it up much as we do. Just anyway, so yeah, but thanks guys. That's good.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'd also like to add about this this aspect here, this Venus here with Jupiter, and obviously Neptune's there, and it also involves Mercury too. I think people, we're talking about Christmas and gift giving and overspending and that kind of thing, and indulgence. I think people are looking for a fantasy now. They're looking for some escapism, and that's written large in this aspect, right? And don't forget that Mercury is also about commerce. Mercury is about commerce. It's in Capricorn, which is more of a restricted sign. It's a Saturn sign. So it's like, we want to have this amazing, big, indulgent Christmas. For some people, it might be the first Christmas for a couple of years they've spent with the wider family or the wider group of friends, because we might have had Christmases where we've just been at home with our own household. But Mercury, perhaps in Capricorn, is telling us, oh, just be careful, right? Just be careful. Enjoy the fantasy, enjoy the escape, enjoy the magic of Christmas, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, it is very interesting, because in this chart, Mercury is still square with Jupiter. I think Mercury is still square with Jupiter, but it's out of the sign. So Mercury is just like what you're talking about, the Mercury is in Capricorn, and then the Jupiter and the Jupiter is in the Pisces. So it's not the square by sign, but a square by degree. So how Marcus, you interpret this?
Well, ordinarily I wouldn't count it, but this is much like the square you referred to, the opposition referred to earlier in your chart, Rod, you know, the moon Mars. This actually works by traditional, totally. Yeah, it works via the Anticia here, because this Anticia is a weird thing. So we'll explain all the mechanics of it. We talked about it before. It's a traditional technique based on the solstice points. But essentially, when the sun is at 0 Capricorn, it's the shortest day or longest night in the northern hemisphere. And so when the sun's at 29 Sagittarius and 1 degree of Capricorn, the day and night are equal lengths, and it's sort of like you move backwards from that sort of 0 Capricorn point in either direction. And those degrees mirror each other. So anyway, all of that to say that 1 degree 51 Capricorn reflects onto 2809 degrees of Sagittarius. So actually it is in square to Mercury still through the Anticia. So that's like a hidden square. And that's quite significant, because Mercury and Jupiter in this chart really don't like each other at all. Mercury's in Jupiter's fall in Capricorn. Capricorn's a sign where Jupiter's not very happy. And Jupiter is in Pisces, which is the fall and detriment of Mercury. So that they're sort of in signs where they just generically don't really like each other. And then for there to be a sort of hidden square, I think that really speaks to what you guys are saying, and what you're saying there, Mandi, about the sort of need for mercurial checks and balances. And Jupiter doesn't want that bubble popped at all. You know, it's kind of like, that's what that square is. It's a hidden square. I think it's something about, okay, this is the reality of this situation. Can we think about this, guys? And can we maybe keep things a bit more pragmatic? And I think that Jupiter and Venus are just not enjoying that idea of being pragmatic at all right here, I don't think.
And don't forget, during a full moon, people like to party too, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. When you guys talking about this,
we've lost Marcus.
Have we? Oh, okay. No, I can continue.
Oh, it's okay.
Are you there?
Still here? Oh, you're still here. Okay.
Frozen. It's normally me that freezes.
When you yeah, and I was worried about mine. Okay, when you guys talking about this set of aspect, I have a idea. I'm just like I just have that kind of imagination. I just thinking about is this set of aspect is like those so-called mortgage holiday. is that things we call so the government or the bank give people like in a difficult situation, they give you some holiday, a couple months, you don't need to pay the interest, you don't need to pay back to the payment, and then but everything you have to read those small print, what's going to happen after, and then when this set of aspect, especially when the Mercury in Capricorn and the square that Jupiter at 29 degree, they say, yes, don't worry, we'll give you mortgage holiday so you have a little bit of breeze and you can buy a lot of gift for your grandparent, for your grandchildren or something, and there's a small print that the interest rate would be something like this and that.
Yes, yeah, that's a perfect analogy. I think that's really interesting. I mean, I do want to say that the Jupiter Venus square is mostly good. It's just that there's some that I think that interpretation is correct so far. So just be cautious about. And I love what you said, Mandy, about the potential for sort of the escapists thing, or escaping into luxury here, or kind of like just wanting to sort of get away from any arguments or stresses or tensions or frustrations by maybe overindulging in some sort of pleasurable, fun stuff, which is going to be pleasurable and fun, but there may be that tendency for it to, like you said, mortgage holiday, brilliant analogy, Rod. That there's don't forget there's a bill at the end of it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, so in this case, and any other set of aspect in this full moon chart draw your attention. I did notice that there is the Sun quincunx Uranus. I know this doesn't appear in the traditional astrology for Marcus, but this is a set of a quincunx there, and Sun with Uranus. So that would make people slightly busy, or try to adopt some situation or adopt some changing. What do you think, Mandi?
Oh, I do love a quincunx. Ironically, but yeah, it's a difficult aspect because it's signs that just don't see each other. They can't see eye to eye. So that's, I think, a good sort of key phrase for a quincunx. So if your sun is about your vitality, and quincunx is sometimes associated with health. So, health and vitality, that's something to think about if that's sort of prominent in your chart. I'm not saying, again, we're not saying we're not prophesying illness for people. But Uranus is obviously comes along and it shakes things up, right? So, I mean, Sun is about ego as well, potentially. And, your how you shine in the world. Well, there might be some challenges to that, coming from you don't quite know where, which goes back to some of the things we're talking about gossip and exaggeration, perhaps, if we want to sort of synthesize them. Those are just a few little ideas, but it's awkward. It's an awkward, it's a minor aspect, but I think it can have a big effect. I think often quincunxes come up in relationships, and because relationships where there's an issue potentially where people don't see eye to eye. And often one person will take one end of the quincunx and another person will take the other end of the quincunx. So there might be someone doing the sun and being the sovereign person and, this is who I am. And then someone comes in and shakes all that up and gives them a little bit of a wobble. And the other thing that is, that's associated with that is that can also, in relationships, particularly in established relationships, ongoing relationships, that can kind of flip as well sometimes. It's like it's such a hard aspect to synthesize internally because you just can't see them. It's between signs that don't have mode in common, they don't have their element in common, for example. So they kind of just don't see each other. So it can kind of flip as well, at certain points. One person can do anyway. That's potted sort of explanation of the quincunx. It's one to watch. I think, especially if you've got one got some in your chart, I mean, if you've got, for example, what you might call the big three, the ascendant and the moon and the sun, which is sort of the big three we would always look at first. So they're very important aspect. And then, when you're starting, basics of looking at a chart, you might look at the elements and the modes, and then you might look at those big three. And if any of those are in quincunx, that is really interesting to explore in your chart. How you, through relationships, through I mean, to give a personal example, my ascendant is in a quincunx to my sun.
Wow.
Capricorn and Gemini ascendant. And when I started to, and there was bits of me that was very Capricornian, and then bits of me that was just kind of restless and completely different, and I didn't really understand. And when I started to study astrology and I saw that quincunx, I thought, between my sun and my ascendant, that really kind of made sense.
Mm.
You have one too, do you, Rod?
I remember. Yeah, I have one because they, ascendant is in Cancer, but my sun is in Aquarius. But this just reminded me one thing when they're talking about in the traditional astrology, do they call this relationship aversion?
Aversion.
Or something?
Yeah.
Aversion.
Because I don't use the quincunx, but funnily enough, that's another thing I've just discovered that we all three have in common. My sun is in exact quincunx to my ascendant too. So we're all three sun quincunx ascendant people. So that's fascinating. Anyway, I don't actually use the bloody quincunx, but I will say, yes, I do use that traditional concept of aversion, exactly that, which is exactly what you're talking about, Mandi, in describing the quincunx, the aspect. This is signs that don't see or hear, or they're literally in aversion to each other. Although I have to say, I don't have the reference book with me because it's in the other room. Manilius, another Roman astrologer, wrote a book called the Astronomica years ago, where he listed signs under videntia, audentia, and another ones. In other words, signs that can see each other, signs that can hear each other. And they're not always, interestingly, under those ancient Hellenistic rules, they're not always what you'd expect. So I do think this is a true, I don't think Taurus and Sag can see or hear each other, even by Manilius's rules, but he has. So anyway, that's by the by. That's just another little reference that I'll have to check up sometime. But I thought I'd throw it out. But yes, traditionally those signs would be in aversion to each other. So that means it is quite hard to get them to operate jointly or in tandem. So I think that's probably the modern traditional crossover point there. Yeah.
So does that mean that, like, suppose sun is one of ourselves, and then the Uranus could be the things we want to change, or the things we need to change? And at this moment, when sun quincunx Uranus, maybe we not really able to see through it or directly. We just like what should I do? What should I do? And trying to a little bit like a headless, or just like trying to find out what's happening now, why the world is changed so much.
That sounds, spot on. But also just like going back to what you guys were saying earlier, I think, Mandi, you said it about like how you can get more than one testimony in the same chart. But I always think that the testimonies are testimonies in astrology often overlap, but they aren't an exact fit. Each one adds a bit more information. So I think this quincunx to the sun, one could take it as being a contemporary astrological technique / aspect / thing that restates and adds a bit of different information to the sun opposing moon Mars, where you've got people's egos out of joint. People are more there's that opposition between the sun, the sort of desire to sort of like be your best self and like do the sun in Sagittarius, I guess, is kind of wanting to demonstrate its knowledge and kind of be right. Be right, that's a sun Sag thing, but also to sort of get out and travel and do so. And then the Mars moon in Gemini, there's something about the ego being challenged there. And what you're saying, Rod, about the quincunx from the sun to Uranus was that people don't quite know what to do with that restless energy. And I felt that the overlap here is the restlessness, is the desire to break free, is the frustration or sense of like, what are we doing? But on the one hand, it's more explicitly kind of potentially going towards challenge or argumentation, but they both have this overlap of restlessness and nervous energy, I think. With Uranus, it's just more like being disconnected or being like a sort of sense of wanting to sort of break things. But that could be taken more literally with Mars. So
yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting as you've been talking, Marcus. I've just thought of something else. That Uranus is in Venus's sign. It's in Taurus. Taurus is associated with money, amongst other things. So is Venus to some extent. So if that's sort of speaking to Venus, obviously, what they look like they might be in a sesquiquadrate, but we won't go there. That's sort of complicated and but I mean, okay, a sesquiquadrate is also a difficult hard outlook. Well, we shouldn't really say hard aspects, but challenging aspect. It's hard to sort of synthesize and sort of live it out, and it tends to be. I think sesquiquadrate tends to come out in a very pointed way, in a very sort of narrow way. But what I was going to say about Uranus being in Taurus, which is Venus's sign, is that brings us back to everything we've said about that Venus and the Jupiter Neptune square, that we're going to sort of, whatever we do, whether it's escapism or exaggeration or spending or whatever, the shock from Uranus will come from that we might not see it coming because of that quincunx, and because so that's another sort of thing in that chart. I mean, we're painting quite a difficult picture, I think, chart, but we are in difficult times, so hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah, I think the chart, that aspect between Venus and Jupiter, as we've said, is actually potentially very positive. The thing to watch out for is it being you going into it too much, you spending too much and going, I can't deal with all this stress. Because and by the way, as I think we touched on earlier, this is only the full moon on the 8th of December. After this point, some of that sort of like nervous energy will start to really dissipate. So it's just that the tendency might be, particularly next week, might feel a bit manic for a lot of people. I know I've got a really busy calendar next week, so you know what I mean? I just think it'll feel a really busy week for a lot of people, and there might be a tendency to like go a bit overboard, as you were saying, Rod, on the Christmas presents or whatnot, and then afterwards sort of have to have a bit of a reality check. Maybe your gas bill will be freaking enormous. Maybe do you know what I mean? There'll be these extra expenses that suddenly arise. And I do want to emphasize the thing that this is said in so many different ways in this chart, like the fact that Jupiter is on Scheat. You cannot ignore the fixed stars. You can't see them in the chart, but Jupiter's bang on Scheat. So that's a lovely Jupiter in Pisces, really, really lovely planet, but it's about to leave a major dignity or go into Aries, where it's not messed up, it's just not as strong as in Pisces, and it's on this star Scheat, which causes problems. So it's kind of I think it's not a horrible chart, but this is a chart with some stress in. With you might, in attempting to alleviate that stress, don't jump out of the frying pan into a delayed fire. Do you know what I mean? That's the issue. Yeah.
As you mentioned the Scheat, I will add a little bit of things on. The things first, another things. I try to avoid calling it Scheat because it sounds like Scheat. Okay, I usually try to, as I'm a foreigner, so I usually play a strange accent. I call it Scheat, with a CH become a K, something like that.
Okay, so call it Scheat. Okay, fine.
Yeah, but that's one thing. But another thing I want to add is the why this big star is so famous. I think Marcus already know it. Is about that. I think before people didn't really notice that, but I think the one thing make astrologer all notice about it is from Titanic, because when the Titanic's launch chart, Mars was a kind of let's say, I'm not allowed to say conjunct. Well, yeah, a line. Mars was conjunct with Scheat, and that all astrologers say, look at that Mars, look at that Scheat, look at the Scheat. And but I want to add that more than interpretation from Benedict Brady. She suggests because this is the star from Pegasus, and the Pegasus is the horse, and then in the mythology, Pegasus uses a front leg to kick a fountain. a fountain out in the place, and this fountain become kind of because I'm not good in classic literature, Mandi maybe know that, but the story is like it become the resource of the inspiration. So all the poet, all the writer want to come to this fountain to get inspiration. So I think Benedict Bradley used this story to give interpretation of the Scheat, apart from misfortune, but also thinking about the inspiring and the creativity energy. So that is always have something different we can apply. So well, should we just round up today's discussion? But maybe Mandi and Marcus, we give a little bit some summarize about what we're going to face this, how we're going to face this full moon.
Yeah, I think what you just said actually about Scheat, if I've said that correctly, and being inspiration, we've actually haven't spoken to the creativity potential, that aspect as well. And also because it's a square, that gives you motivation.
So does that mean I'm going back to turn on my notebook and start writing?
Yeah, sounds like it. Or some photography, some more amazing photography.
Yes, I think this is a much more visual combination, right? The Jupiter Venus is like
yes,
arts,
right.
is like colors and painting and
dance.
maybe dance. I was thinking maybe music, but music usually involves Mercury, and so does writing. So this is more like visual and dance. Dance. And, movement. Exactly, Mandi. Movement with the Sagittarius involvement there. So, yeah, no, exactly. Creativity. There's lots of potential creative energy. I did think of when you're talking about Scheat, whatever we're calling it now, the star, which is potentially a bit dodgy, but also Bernadette was saying that it's involved with creativity. The first person I thought of when you said that was Van Gogh. And I don't know whether Van Gogh had Scheat in his chart, but that kind of, that when you look at some of Van, like his famous painting, the Starry Night painting with all that energy and the swirls in the clouds and everything. And then obviously he was not a happy man, was he? But he had this enormous creativity. So I guess what would take home be? Yeah, I think there's a lot of creative potential. I guess my take home from this lunation, this just to start this month, and the month from the 8th onwards should get a lot easier, is just whatever stress or tension or anxiety you may experience, or just getting busy and a bit hot under the collar, just use some discipline to rein it in, particularly social discipline. Just kind of be mindful of other people's boundaries, and that's the trine to the Saturn. And what else would be useful for that? Just maybe not just editing yourself, but just also kind of editing your time a little bit, just boundary your time a little bit. So if you're finding you're getting really stressed about stuff, just try and organize your time a little bit. And then the Venus Jupiter side of it is just do some I think that's a great suggestion, Manu, to do some creative work, get involved in creative projects. So if you're tempted instead to go out and spend loads of money, maybe instead do something creative,
make some Christmas presents.
Yeah, you could even get a bit crafty, or think laterally. So that's a brilliant suggestion. So think laterally, so you're not having to, rather than spending loads, why don't you just make some nice stuff, or put together, use your ingenuity,
imagination,
your creativity to put together some nice presents.
Lovely.
That don't cost you.
I love this. This is a great idea. So you guys, this year's Christmas gift would be my star photo.
Amazing. But that would be an amazing gift. So use your creativity and I think that is also help us to find the true meaning of Christmas. It's not just spending a lot of money, but it's also you show your appreciation and you show your love to your family and a friend. That is so lovely. Wow, it is so interesting, and the time for is so fast, nearly
1 hour, and then I always enjoy share my Friday night with all my friends astrologer talking about the chart. Even in the holiday, I still connect online.
Well done.
Even it's difficult with Wi-Fi, I still say no. I have to do it, and I have to say one thing. You guys may know Mandi just gave a very a webinar last Saturday about Pluto in Aquarius. I have to say, we received a lot of feedback, great feedback, and that Monday with Dr. J. Lee Lehman, and their conversation, their discussion about the Pluto in Aquarius is amazing. Monday talking about the different generations of Pluto in Aquarius with different generations of Pluto leader, and that is a fascinating combination. It's a fantastic. I mean, well, already what's done is done, but I mean, in maybe in few months' time, I will put together online to so people can bilaterally record to listen to it. But I will do the advertising so that next month, this month to be honest, is this month December, let me double check.
17th.
17th. 70, yeah. Thank you, Mandi. On the 17th of December, Saturday, we have a link bell talking about the Saturn in Pisces, and Fernanda Paiva talking about the Pluto in Aquarius, a new era. So that would be so interesting to join us. Yeah, that we're really looking forward. And I have to say, Mandi, well done, amazing webinar. I really love it.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad it went well. I'm probably gonna do some writing around some of those themes and sort of do some articles around it as well and expand on it a little bit.
That would be really lovely. Well, thank you, Mandi. Thank you, Marcus, and thanks everyone joining us today. And well, next week will be our World Scope monthly discussion, and then there's a lot of things happening at this moment from Asia, from China, and from and the World Cup is like so crazy at this moment. So, have you guys followed the World Cup? No.
Just struck me actually, the Mars in that chart on the moon is actually because Mars is about sport, isn't it? I don't know what that's to that chart we've just spent it in looking at. And Mars is a sport and competition.
Yes.
And I think FIFA has because a couple of days ago I took a FIFA chart with Liam McCarthy, and then FIFA also has a Mars in Gemini.
Interesting.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah. I think of all the controversy that's gone on in Qatar with because of course they're very LGBTQ unfriendly, and all of that kicking off. That's fascinating. Exactly. There's a whole other mundane side to that chart anyway.
So please check up that video. I already put on YouTube too. And FIFA also facing their Saturn return too. So many going on. Very interesting. But I can continue talking, but I think we need the race. So thanks everyone. Thanks Marcus. Thanks Mandi. We'll see everyone next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. When we say bye, usually I will click, but I think today we need Mandi click. On more, stop recording. And you have to click the stop. No, stop. Stop. Stop recording to the cloud. Okay.